All right, guys. So this is Jennifer Campos Brown. She graduated from Texas A&M University San Antonio a little over a year ago, and she's here to talk to us today about the job that she has in Victoria, Texas.
Okay, so my name is Jennifer Campos Brown. I am a qualified mental health professional in community services. So I just want to give you a brief introduction on kind of like what my life looked like the last few years before we get into what I'm doing now. So I started my bachelor's in Laredo at the A&M branch over there, and then I transferred over here to this A&M branch in 2019. A few months after that, I met my now husband, and I was going to school here. We were living together. And out of the blue, towards the end of January 2023, he was informed that a job opportunity had opened up in his hometown, Victoria. And so we were like, okay, how are we going to do this? And we thought we had time. Monday, he found out about the job opening up. By Friday, he was told that he had the job. And so we asked, like, okay, when do you want us to be over there? And they were like, yesterday. And so, we had no idea what to do. We were super fortunate in that he had family friends whose grandparents had just moved out of their home and into nursing home. And they didn't want the house to be vacant for long, so they allowed us to stay there and live there until we found a place of our own. And so while that was going on, I was commuting over here for school. So on Mondays, I would drive up before my classes, stay here throughout the week, and after my last class on Friday, I would drive back to Victoria, be there for the weekend and do it all over again. And so I did that from February 2023 until I graduated in May 2024. And so it was a lot, driving back and forth, still having to show up to my classes, get everything done. It was a struggle. And so when graduation started approaching, I realized, like, oh my gosh, now I'm actually having to move to Victoria full time. I didn't know anything out there. I didn't know what jobs were available. But I was told about this one place that I will obviously tell you guys about in a minute. And everybody was like, yeah, check it out. It's a mental health place here, or whatever. And I emailed Stephanie, and I was so worried about it because I was like, am I even going to be good enough? Am I even qualified to help these people? Would I even be a good fit for the job? And she assured me, you'll be fine, you'll be great. She wrote me a letter of recommendation, and in June 2024, I started the coolest job in the world, and I'm biased, but that's okay. So, the place that I work at is called Gulf Bend Center. It is one of 39 local mental health authorities. I provided like a brief description or definition of what that is, but it's basically, in the map it shows like all the different like mental health authorities, right, and the counties that they provide services to. So in the bottom corner, I think in purple, like it's the light purple, that's Victoria County, and so we provide services to Victoria County and the surrounding 6 counties. So Jackson County, Calhoun, Refugio, Goliad, DeWitt, and Lavaca. And so we just provide all these mental health services to these areas, try to get out there because a lot of it is like rural areas and big lands and stuff like that. And a lot of these people don't have access to mental health services or even ways to get to a mental health place for services. So we kind of try to like close that gap, right? It's pretty cool. But so these are a few of the services that Gulf Bend Center offers. There's a huge list, but I only listed a few. There's a mental health clinic, and so that's like where they provide psychiatric services. They have 2 providers, they have a whole nursing staff, and they they, deal with the whole psychiatric part of everything. Keeping up with like medication management. Once people come back from like inpatient hospitalization, they kind of keep up with medications that were prescribed there. We have the IDD department for intellectual developmental disabilities. We have adult mental health. And so with that one, it's like all the different services provided to adults. So like case management, counseling, substance use, peer support. And it's the same with the child and adolescent mental health, but they also have more stuff geared towards like children, right? So like ways that they get supported at school so that they're not having to miss out on their classes in order to, address their mental health. And then my favorite is crisis intervention. And so we have a couple of teams for crisis intervention. So we have our MCOT team, which is our mobile crisis outreach team. And so what they do is they respond to calls from the hotline. And so those are usually at the jails, at the hospitals, at schools, and it's for like crisis calls. So people who are endangered to themselves or to others, or who are in a deep psychotic episode. And so since they were short-staffed the last few months, I was also taking some on-call shifts with them every week. But then what my team does, we are diversion / CRT, which is community response team. And so we are like a hybrid between MCOT and case management. So I'm partnered with a mental health deputy from the sheriff's department, and we ride together at all times. So we respond to calls, that come in from law enforcement, like over dispatch, judges, family members, or even the clients themselves, because a lot of the people we see are like repeat clients, right? And so a lot of times they end up going into crisis again, and so they'll call us and they'll say like, hey, like I'm wanting to kill myself or whatever. Sometimes it's literally just like that. And so we respond, and we try to practice least restrictive means whenever possible. So that means like we try to divert them, right? So if we can keep them from going to jails, if we can keep them from going to the ER, if we can keep them from going to an inpatient hospital, we're gonna do that. And we try to do everything we can to make sure that they don't have to go to these places, because also, we're trying to free up resources for other people who might like actually desperately need it. Because for some people, they can be, de-escalated and brought back down, and, we safety plan them, right? And we continue to follow up with them. But for some people, that is absolutely not possible. And so we want to make sure that when those people come in, we have the resources available to them, or even freeing up law enforcement to take community calls, and they're not having to deal with, a mental health call or the ERs, right? And then from there, we also add them to our caseload and continue to follow up with them, after they experience the crisis, and make sure that they don't go into crisis again, or if they do, they have the resources available to kind of just like reach out and hopefully prevent a crisis from escalating. So for preparation, well, simple, right? Education and life. So for education, when Stephanie asked me about this, I was like, okay, how did my education help me in what I do now? And, I kept thinking about it, and I was walking around my office and thinking about like, okay, how did my education help me? And then I was asking my coworkers how my education helped me, and we were trying to come up with all these different things. And then I realized that the reason I struggled so much with that is because, everything that I learned, I genuinely learned, right? So it's hard to pinpoint where exactly I got this information from. So it's hard to know like, okay, well in this class I learned this, or this class I learned that, because it's like I genuinely learned all of this, and it feels like I've always known it. Obviously I haven't, right? But that's the purpose of education. The purpose of education is to learn it, and it becomes so ingrained in you that it just feels like common knowledge to you at that point, right? And not just going to school to get credits on a class, not just studying for an exam to memorize it and then forget about it. Like, you want to learn everything that you can possibly learn. You know, no matter how far you get into your career, no matter how much education or training, you know, you always want to be learning, because like that's how you're able to help more people. You know, the more knowledge you have, the more likely you are to be able to help somebody. And definitely, you know, I was saying in the last class, there are a few classes that I would say like definitely helped a lot. So like abnormal psych, right? Because that's what I deal with on a daily basis. And writing in psychology. Because a lot of what I do is like, yeah, I deal with clients, right? But more than anything, documentation is so important. And they always say at our office, like, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. And so it's like you can see 9 people and have 40 documents that you have to submit. And you have to submit it within the first 48 hours. And so it's a lot. And being able to have that technical writing and clinical writing, and it's like learning to hear what people are saying, and like there's times where it makes absolutely no sense with the people that you're talking to, but having to write that and translate that into a clinical way is not easy, especially when you have so many documents that you have to do. But you know, stuff like writing in psychology or writing intensive courses helps so much. You know, like I had no idea that it would actually help me that much, but it has. And then also, you know, once I did get hired, all the training that I had to get there, so like the first few weeks were just like behind a computer doing all these different modules that I absolutely hated because they were boring. But then it was like, okay, now I'm getting into like, how do we implement this stuff? And you know, getting to shadow my coworkers at that point, follow them on calls. And I was shadowing for about a month and a half. But little by little, you know, they just kind of started throwing me out there and saying like, okay, you're just gonna take the lead on this call. And like, I had no idea what I was doing. You know, I was getting cussed at by inmates, and you know, like I didn't have my voice at the time. So like, I was just like, okay, you know, next question. And you know, it wasn't until a little bit later when I got the confidence, you know, to speak for myself and to have my voice, you know, that I was able to redirect people when they're acting like that, because that happens a lot. And then I would say life definitely helped prepare me for what I do now. It took me 10 years to graduate with my bachelor's, and a few years ago, it's not something that I would have admitted out loud because I was so embarrassed about it. But it wasn't for lack of knowledge or, you know, just not understanding the material. It was like life was happening. You know, I could not get out of bed. I could not get up to shower. Like, I was really struggling with my depression, and it was just so debilitating. Like, I could not function. And I would stop showing up to class because for me, the choices were between showing up to class and surviving that day. And obviously I chose to survive that day. And that was what it was like every single day. And, you know, I finally reached out, and I reached out, you know, to Stephanie, and, you know, you'd be surprised at what can happen when you reach out to your professors, you know, and how supportive they can be. And it definitely changed my life, like, you know, because that was that light I needed in such a dark time for me. Like, I didn't see any light at that time, but, you know, I just needed that support, and I got it. So some parting advice, get to know your professors. Like I was just saying, you know, they want you to succeed. They want you to achieve, you know, your biggest dreams. They want you to chase your goals, you know, but they also don't know what you're going through. And so you can't expect them to just know what's going on in your life if you're not talking to them and communicating with them. Because there are some people who just don't want to show up to class, and it's because they don't care. But then there's other people who just really cannot, or who are really going through something, and professors understand. Genuinely learn and never stop learning. Like I said earlier, no matter how far into your career you are, keep trying to learn. Always have that fire to learn and want to know more. Because, just learning all these things, it's like it's never enough. It's never enough to, satisfy that. Benefits. I didn't mention this earlier, but it's worth noting. If you are wanting to continue your education while working, try to look for a place that's supporting your long-term goals. So I was super fortunate in that the place that I'm working, they provide tuition assistance, and so it's not a lot, but anything helps. They also are very flexible with your hours. So if I had stuff I had to do for school, they'd be understanding about, helping me balance, work and school and home life. And then also with the practicum hours, I don't know if you guys were aware that for some places, they actually charge you to complete your practicum hours, and they'll charge you an entire session's worth. And so when you're having to do it every week, it gets really expensive. And so where I work, they allow you to do it for free if you're working there. So those are things that are worth looking into and having that support. Never count yourself out, because, like I said earlier, with my job, I was so worried about not being able to do it, not being the right person, and I absolutely love what I do. Nobody knows that it took me 10 years to graduate. They have no idea. My clients don't know. They just know that they have somebody who's standing in front of them, willing to be their voice, willing to advocate for them. So don't count yourself out. And remember your why. Everybody in this room chose psychology for a reason. Maybe because you thought it might be the easiest, or you wanted to understand the way people think, or you want to help people, whatever it is. Always remember your why, and always use that to keep you grounded. Because there are going to be days where you're absolutely exhausted and you're like, why am I even doing this? Why am I staying up this late? Why am I even working this long? But your why is always going to be the reason to keep going. So just hold on to that. These are my references. Does anybody have any questions?
We have about 26 minutes for questions. In the last class, we needed more time. We didn't have enough, but feel free to ask any questions that you have.
So you got your job basically right after you graduated, right? Did you do any internships or anything else in between then? Or
No.
it's just only your education really that you had?
Yeah, so literally I started applying before I graduated. And so that was the only place I applied to, which was also really scary for me because I had no idea. Victoria is really small, and I didn't know what was available out there. But I heard good things about this place, and so I was like, okay, let me try it. And so I went for my interview not too long after I graduated.
I feel like it was right around the same time,
Yeah, maybe a week or 2 weeks after I graduated, I went for the interview, and then from there, just got hired, I guess.
Do y'all do internships? Do you have interns there?
I know that they offer some kind of internships. I don't know that it would be with my team specifically. it'd probably be at like the main office with all the other like services that they offer there. But yeah, we do.
I saw like in the little Texas map you had, there was like a Bexar County one. What would be like the Bexar County equivalent?
What
I
is
see it right there. It's like right there in the line.
It's not Blue Bonnet.
Because this is like exactly what I want to do.
Let me see. So if you look up LMHA map in Texas, because it also came with what are they called? Like the legends.
Oh yeah.
But it was like a really long list, so I had to.
As you say, it's tiny up there probably. Look up LMHA Bexar County and see if that comes up.
I think Blue Bonnet is.
The Hill Country, I thought.
Yeah.
Like 10.
That's.
And actually, I thought it was just called Bexar County, but I might be wrong.
So. It is called Center for Healthcare Services. And each one, each LMHA offers a lot of like similar services, at least like the base ones. But then each one also has their own, I guess like add-on programs. So like my program or my team is an add-on program. So we're funded by a state grant. So not every LMHA has one, but I don't know if Bexar County has one. They might.
Yeah, I'm very interested in like the crisis and the substance abuse.
Yeah, so I think all of them have to have crisis services. I'm just not sure, like, what all, the programs are.
It's interesting because I'm wondering if like bigger counties like Bexar County, where we have like a well-funded sheriff's office and we have a well-funded like San Antonio PD, I wonder if they have people who work directly for them who kind of do this, and in smaller counties where maybe the PD isn't as well funded, they're having to do like to do it through grants and something like this. But yeah, check that out. Let us know what you find out.
I know that like San Antonio has a lot of like mental health deputies and officers, and they do a lot of the trainings here in San Antonio. I don't know how they're partnered with like mental health professionals, but they do have a lot of like mental health officers.
Yeah.
For this job, so they hired you straight out of your bachelor's degree. They didn't require any other certifications that you had to get, like maybe while you're being offered.
Yeah, so while I was there, there was like a lot of different like little trainings we had to do, or like to get our QMHP, we had to learn how to do, it's called an adult needs and skills assessment. We call it an ANZA, that's why I can't really remember what the S is for. But it's like a 4 or 5 hour class, and it's kind of learning how to do like that kind of assessment on people, and then you have to take like a bunch of these tests for it, and that's a pain. But like they do a lot of the training in-house and all that. All they require is that you at least have your bachelor's in like psychology, sociology, stuff like that.
If you ever wanted to go back for a graduate degree, would you qualify yourself for that position?
Yes and no. Like, so I would still be able to do that position. I'd still be able to do it.
So I think
I
this all
wouldn't-
just fall under Bexar County.
I wouldn't get like a promotion or anything from there, because then like we still have my team lead who still does what we do. She's just like the team lead, but then from there it's like our department head, and so she does a lot of just like the paperwork stuff and all, that. But they don't really get to like treat clients anymore, or really talk to the clients.
What else? What other questions, guys? Can you tell us about one of your experiences that you've had with a client? One or two, maybe? So they know kind of like what that looks like.
Yeah. So, okay, there's a scary one. Or not, yeah, it's kind of scary. So, our team also does like transports. So, like, if somebody has to go to an inpatient facility and one of us is like sending them, we'll transport them to the facility so that law enforcement doesn't have to do it. And so, my supervisor and our sergeant, or like the sergeant of the MHOs, they responded to a call at this one guy's house, and they decided they were going to send him to an inpatient facility. He was calm when we got there, me and my partner, because we were just going to transport. He was fine. There was a bunch of other deputies that were there also, but as soon as they were putting him in the back of the vehicle, he just started yelling. They closed the door, and then you just hear a bunch of banging, and like the sergeants opened the back door, and he just had blood just pouring down his face. So he was banging his head on the partition, and then like cut open his forehead, and so they pulled him out, and he's still trying to fight with them, and they're restraining him, and so they had him on his side. This was all in the neighbor's front yard, so there was just blood all over their grass, and like we didn't know where all the blood was coming from, and so I was running around trying to find water to clear it, and they were like, "Oh, there's water bottles on their front porch," and I was like, "Okay, but like the land is so big over there, so I'm like, running literally like a block to get to their front yard, grabbed that, ran back. He's still screaming, but then he would like calm himself down and was like mellow, would comply, and then work himself back up again, and then just start yelling, and started saying that we should just call his family, and he was saying, call my family to come see this because this is what they wanted anyways. And so what had happened was that he was calling the hotline trying to ask for a way or information on how to complete like an assisted suicide. And so obviously we responded, and so that was that whole thing. Took him to the hospital, did the same thing in the hospital where he would work himself up, start yelling at people, but then calm himself down. He had 7 stitches on his forehead, and then when they were going to transport him again, he freaked out again, started banging his head on the partition again, cut open his forehead in the same spot, but at that point they were like, okay, we're just going to clean it and like send him off. But once he got to the facility, he was saying that he told the deputies that they were going to see him on the front page of the news, and that he was actually going to kill himself now, so they were wasting their time. He said that he was either going to do it in public or take a kid hostage at Chuck E. Cheese. And we don't really know what happened after that. He went to the facility. I think my supervisors met up with him a few times, but yeah, that one was an interesting one, I'd say.
So that sounds like a very long night. What are your shifts like?
So that was during the day.
Oh.
So we work 4 10s. So yeah, it's like,
Back to back.
huh?
Back to back. Or just any 4 days a week?
So usually like we'll like alternate. So like this month I'm on Tuesdays through Fridays, but because I was also doing on call, I usually do mine on Wednesdays, and so like I'll do like 8 to 7, but the on call starts at 5. So like those last 2 hours I would just kind of do like both, and then after 7 I was like strictly on call, and so whatever calls came in I would take those, and then my regular shift the next day would start at 8, but then my on call shift would end at 8, so I would just kind of transition into that. So there was times where I was like clocked in for 30 hours straight and just kind of winging it, I guess.
You take naps in between.
I tried to, but it was always like as soon as I fell asleep, I would just get another call, and so I wouldn't sleep. I would take lunch naps though. I live 4 minutes from our office, so I would just go home and nap.
And you were sharing there's 4 of you who cover that whole territory. And if you look how big that territory is, that's like 7 Bear counties. And so you were sharing with me at lunch, you might have a call like at the top of one, and then her second call might be at the bottom of that. And so it's literally like 2 hours, 2.5 hours away that she's having to travel to get to that call if she's on. Yeah.
But it's fun. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's
You're
fun.
good.
Do you guys bill like your call
That's a great
clients,
question.
Or do they only get billed whenever you take them to specific facilities?
So, like with the services that my team provides, like diversion and CRT, it's non-billable. So like we can keep checking in on somebody and they will not get charged. You know, we can connect them to services. And so like for some people, like especially like the ones who like really, really need it, like I'll just keep checking on them. Like this one lady right now, she's, I feel so sad for her. Her son and his wife and their 6 kids moved in to her house after her husband died, moved her into the garage, destroyed the house, and then left. And like she thought he was paying these bills and he wasn't. And so her electricity was just shut off. And she's always falling because her walker's terrible. And then, you know, what was your question?
Do they get charged?
Do they get
Oh,
charged?
okay, yeah. So with her, it's like I'll go like every day, and you know, the other day I was at the SNAP office turning in stuff for her because she can't drive either. For like the MCOT services, that's also, I don't think that's billable, because it's like a crisis thing, right? So usually, like if somebody's going inpatient, we, you know, they use their insurance, but we also have like our Gulf Bend bed days, and so those are like bed days that are paid for in advance, and so we're allotted a certain amount every year. And so for people who don't have insurance, like we have to authorize those bed days for them to be able to use so that they don't get any kind of bills or anything like that. But with that, there's also like we have to meet very specific criteria. So if somebody's just like, well, I want to go inpatient, but they don't have, you know, insurance, like we can't send them, because if we're gonna fund it, you know, we have to be able to justify that, you know, they were a danger to themselves, they were a danger to others, or because of their psychosis, they were unable to take care of themselves. So usually with that, we try to make it to where like there's not added stress because of, you know, not being able to pay and stuff like that.
Do you ever find it hard to like not get over-invested in like one of your funds?
Yeah, so I mean, like I was telling, you know, the last class, like I'm an emotional person, and I feel like in order to do my job well, like I have to be invested, but I also have to make sure that I keep that boundary where I'm like, okay, like I want to do so much for this person, and I know I have the means to, but I can't. You know, ethically speaking, like what I do for one, I would have to be able to do for all, right? And just not crossing those boundaries. So, like, it's hard emotionally when I'm like, I really want to do this and I know I can't, but it's never like okay, I'm just gonna do it anyways kind of thing. Like, I know I can't, and so I just don't, you know, entertain that. But yeah, it is hard sometimes when I worry about, you know, some of the clients, because for some of them, you know, like, and it's as sad to say it, you know, it's like, it's not an if, it's a when. And it's one of the ugliest parts of the job, but that's kind of what it is for some people.
And you had, I think I was the one who asked in the last class, but maybe you can talk to them about this too, because your area is relatively big. If they took a job, for example, in Bear County, that's a relatively small area. So how do you handle it if you see someone who you've had to, provide that kind of support for? What how does that work?
So like, because of HIPAA, if I see somebody out in public, I can't engage with them first. So I would just kind of have to act like I don't know them. But if they were to come up to me and, say hi, I would just kind of, small talk, whatever, never bring up anything personal unless they started doing it first. And then I just kind of, follow along with that. But really trying to keep it as minimal as possible because it can get weird. So we just try to avoid that.
What else, you guys? We didn't ask this in the last class. You don't have to be real specific about this, but were you surprised how much or how little you were paid for this job? Like, did you have an expectation? I know it's in Victoria, but can you talk a little bit about that? And did you negotiate your salary at all?
I didn't negotiate my salary, but I don't know because I love what I do, so I'd be doing it anyways. But a lot of people do say we don't get paid enough for what we do, or like what we have to deal with, or what we have to see.
Yeah, I looked online when I knew you were coming, and I have to say this: if you go online to the Gulf Bend Center, they have their job openings, and they do have, I think, salaries for almost everything. I don't know what you make, but I'll just share that it seemed like the most common salary I was seeing was around $18.50 an hour, and as low as $14 an hour. And I was really yeah, I was surprised by that because I was like, holy guacamole! Like, I would think that even just because you had to get your qualified mental health professional certification and all of that, I would think that would come with some additional support. So. Yeah, they were all like $18.54, $18.49. I was like, they really love 18 there in Victoria. But I figured it out. I think it was like $34,000 a year or something. And I was like, wow, that feels so low. But I know cost of living is lower. But yeah, okay.
Or like what we have to deal with sometimes. Yeah. But also the good thing about them is like they do offer where like if like at the end of like your year, like your anniversary, they'll kind of like do like an employee audit kind of thing, see how you've done. They have you grade yourself, and then they have like your supervisors grade you. And if you meet like a certain grade, like you can get like a paid increase.
Okay.
So I mean, that's always helpful.
Yeah. And you were telling me something else at lunch. You should share it with them. The award that you were nominated for.
Oh, yeah. I was nominated for, they call it like our Sager Award. And so that is like our highest award that's offered over there. And so it's kind of like being a good teammate, but also going above and beyond for your clients and all of that stuff. And so I was like really bummed because I didn't win. But I was kind of happy because I am the only person who's been there for only a year to have ever been nominated, so that was cool. And then the lady who did win has been there 38 years, so I was like, okay, whatever. But
I said they had to catch her before she retired. Hopefully she retires this year. You're in next year.
Yeah.
What else, you guys? Any other questions at all? So I know you talked about your benefits really quickly. I don't think you guys understand how amazing it is that you can do, if you're employed there, that you can do your qualifying hours for your LPC there. That's a huge, that could save you thousands of dollars. And so it is something to consider because there's these sorts of authorities all over, right? There's 39 in the state of Texas. And so thinking of, I don't know if they all offer that as a benefit, but it's something I had never thought about that. I didn't even know that was a potential benefit until you said it in the last
Yeah.
class. So that's huge. That's a huge
It
money
is.
saver. Yeah.
And I had no idea because like I never considered like even having to pay for that stuff.
Yeah.
But,
It's
yeah.
crazy out there. Yeah. All right, you guys. Well, we're at 45. I think we're good. Thank you so